And we're live here at the 12 Cent Treehouse for part 2 of talking about story structure, what makes a good story, stuff we hate in stories, and we might talk about some people we dislike too. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm Sean McLaughlin, a writer-producer, worked in a bunch of TV and comics, and with me, as always, is Steve Jones from lovely New Zealand. Steve, you want to introduce yourself?
I am a Californian living in New Zealand, and I draw comic books and cartoons and animation too. So there.
Nice. And Scott?
Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Collins. I've worked for Marvel, DC, whatnot for a long time. Have independent projects as well of Patra and Adam and Pastaways. And I'm just trying to stay alive.
And I'm Jeff Johnson. I've drawn a ton of stuff. And I'm not feeling so great, but I'll try not to ruin the podcast.
But he's shown up. He's muscling through.
Right.
Scott, in animation, stay alive means it's keep alive, and it just means blink or keep the character moving.
Oh,
somehow.
yeah. Or like have them like move a little bit so they don't just stand there.
Yep.
So last week we had a really fun conversation about what we all thought makes a great story. And before the end of the night, we want to get to a story. I want to hear about how Sean got yelled at by Miyazaki.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But we'll save that. We'll save that to the end. So where did we leave off with the what was our last cogent point?
We were still kind of talking about how you get into a story and how you begin it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really sure we achieved any cogent points.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
We're trying to put one over on people, Steve.
Yeah. So they think they missed something if they didn't see the last episode. They're like,
and they think we know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
How's it going?
I
like. Audience, do you feel hoodwinked?
Yeah. I always found that when you're doing a comic, I find that the first image is a lot easier because it's it sort of sets the tone and it's mostly described. When you get a script, but like doing storyboards, I always found that figuring out how to get into a scene was a major accomplishment. Like if I could figure out how I could get into a scene, then I could figure out how I could get out of a scene. And then the rest in between is like, as our friend Scooter used to say, is just traffic management. But opening that first opening image, where the viewer or the reader is interested and either wants to stay watching or put some money down. I mean, Kirby was great at it. Like his splash pages were awesome.
Yeah.
And then his 2-page spreads were out of control.
Yeah.
Here's a page by Scott. I don't know if this is the first page.
Yeah. I should start sending to you those pages formatted to help you out with the loading of the pages.
Well, there's that. That's a 2-page spread.
That's great. That's awesome.
That's a great one. And I love the flow of this one, Scott, because it leads from the top left down to the bottom right.
Right.
So, and it has some captions along the way, but like I don't feel any urge to skim those. I can feel like I'm read those as I'm moving along. So that's great design.
Thank you. Yep. Well, I mean, this was a project that I had even more control on. I was writing and drawing this. So I got to really know and think about where all those things were going to be placed. And I knew exactly what they were, that kind of thing. And I was trying to like make sure I was not being the writer of the project just because they were being nice to me. I was trying to really show off and do the best job I could. So then I could pick certain ways of knowing how I wanted things to roll and make sure that everything was supposed to be read in the proper way, that kind of thing. Like putting those captions there in the middle.
Yeah. Being able to plan where everything's going to go while you're writing it must be super beneficial to when you finally get to the drawing part.
Yep. Made things a lot easier that way. Plus, as the artist working on the book that I had just written, I had already thought about those pages, a whole bunch as I wrote them. So I could start formulating ideas as I was writing the whole thing. Right. Sometimes even jotting down notes of what I wanted, that kind of thing. So then when I got to the pages, I didn't have to read it, 6 more times to get the understanding of what the writer was trying to think of.
So were you writing a script or were you just laying it out as you went along?
Nope, I wrote a whole script. I don't know if Jeff was able to get those in. That's from the cover. There we go. Yeah, we're not going to see the whole thing. I should have taken
Right.
a better picture of it. But no, I wrote full scripts and I wrote the scripts first. I wanted to make sure I was doing the writer job in a proper way that DC was doing it at the time. Yeah, this was I think this was basically based off of the script style that I'd seen Jeff Johns have at the time, or at least my best interpretation of it, with the panel, page numbers, the listing of the all of the scripted pieces or the pieces to be lettered in there, all that kind of stuff. I actually numbered all of those things because I was always tired of either seeing my editor do it or I have to do it as the page went along, so that then when you're doing ballooning for the whole thing, it's much easier if it's just all laid out like that with the numbers, so that those numbers on the left hand side of the column would tell them this is the first thing on the page, and when we write it up later, then you could say balloon 1 goes here, caption 2 goes there, whatever goes along.
No, I wish that was standard in comics, and maybe it is now, but I know it avoids so much unnecessary miscommunication in animation that all of the dialogue is numbered. You know what I mean? So because you just can't keep track of a script if it's like. And so then when he says blah, 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 like you just need to be able to say line 56. And then when line 56 is out, it's like, okay, and then you don't renumber either. It's like line 57 will always be line 57 in that script, no matter how many new lines you add, or, then you'll get 57A, 57B, 57C or whatever, but.
Exactly.
It's always going to be in the same place. Yeah. How much did you change stuff when you got into the actual drawing? Did you stay pretty much to your original vision?
Pretty close. The only thing that did change once in a while was that once I laid out the page, I might change the order sometimes and the way that the caption went or the words went or whatever. Like I'd list certain things a certain way that I thought they were supposed to go when I was writing it. But when I got to the page, like here, I might have had in the listing, on that right-hand panel, sanctimonious fraud. I might have had that before the pox of him, that Mr. Freeze is detaching there. His headpiece is detaching from the rest of the figure. And as I drew it, then I went, oh, no. And then I went full, professional on this. I tried to be, where then I actually went back to the script before it was lettered and then changed it even in the script. I changed the numbers and everything. So the pox are first or anything like that, what I would have changed. Most of the big stuff I don't remember having to change, but occasionally too, there also might have been a couple options there where I drew that crowd in on that same panel, and I may not have given them dialogue. But once I was laying it out, I was like, no, they should have a little thing, and that dialogue pertains to the story, so we'll put it in and whatever going on. So occasionally,
I loved. Go ahead, Sean.
Go on. Well, if you were doing it again, would you, I'm sorry, if you were doing it again, would you go that same path, or would you lay it out more on the page and then go do the dialogue?
I would try and do it that way. And if it was for a company like Marvel, DC, or something like that, I would probably 100% do it that way, especially if it's one of their creations kind of a thing. They own the material. If it's a creator-owned material, I might not do it quite that way because I want more flexibility as I drew the page or was working on it, that I'd have to be. Because all the creator-owned stuff we work on now, it's like we don't have 50 years of Kirby drawing the FF or Carmine Infantino drawing Captain Cold to have all of that stuff in the back of our brain, so that that's more of a finished product when it's done. If we're doing creator-owned stuff, there's so much more things we have to think up on the fly, or trying to almost fake like we had 50 years of experience working on these characters or this situation.
Totally.
One
of the things I think.
Scott, go ahead,
Steve.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that Scott just brought up about creator-owned, but I also think it doesn't surprise me what Scott just did in his own comic. This doesn't particularly have to do with story, but it certainly has to do with trying to be a professional in either comics or animation, is that as much as like writing or drawing or any of the artistic jobs on the book are like ostensibly the hardest job on the book, you really do, if you don't want to have 10 million times more headaches for yourself and for everyone else that you're working with, you kind of have to always be thinking like your own editor or production assistant or production manager too. Like, so the fact that Scott was doing that and taking responsibility for that rather than going like, well, that's the editor's job. You know, it's like, all right, well, the editor's got however many books he's got. Like, no one is going to understand your comic better than you. You're going to understand it better than the writer too, because you're going to have to get it once the writer has finished the script. That is, you're going to understand it better than them, because then you're going to have to get in there and interpret the minutia of everything that they've said moment to moment, thing to thing, you know, like, and it's true with your storyboards too, you know, like, and I know that, and it's just one of those things where if you think somebody else is going to do the thing, like, A, they're probably not, or B, they're just not going to do it as well with your level of understanding or different stuff. So it can be annoying because you're like, look, it's already hard enough for me to draw. You're saying I have to write scene descriptions for all of this storyboard, or I've got to number this, or I've got to keep track of this, or whatever. But if you don't, I think I worked on this crazy animated show called Big Mouth, and because it was so writer heavy and there were so many artists working on every scene, and they really had it down to a science in terms of how they managed to pull off that show on that budget. But one of the things about that, it was the greatest level of like labeling discipline I've ever worked with on a show. It was like every file had to be labeled exactly a certain way in a protocol. Every layer had to be, you know, written down in exactly a certain way. Every superfluous layer had to be eliminated. I learned all these things about like making your files as small as possible. And it's because everything you did was going to change hands so many times. They just could not afford the slowdown of like, wait, what layer is this on? What's this going? You know, like what bit of dialogue are we talking about here? So it's just,
right.
I guess it's somewhat off subject, but it's just thinking about what Scott just said. And then when you're doing your own thing, it just applies that much more because, like you said, you don't have 50 years of backlog to be able to have people go like, well, what does the Fortress of Solitude look like? If you're doing your own comic where you've invented the Fortress of Solitude, your version of it, then that's the only thing that's going to exist. So
similar to that, when I was writing all those directions and doing all that stuff for writing it, even though I was drawing the book, I also had that angle that because I was a newbie, especially, I didn't want to make a mistake. So I wanted to make sure it was there for the editor to see beforehand as much as possible before we got to the drawing and everything else later on. So that if I did get a character wrong or a continuity piece wrong or whatever else going on, the editor would be like, oh, no, you can't do this with that character or whatever it was. Then we would catch that in the early stage. So I'd want my scripts to be full that way, assuming that, you know, I don't have all the history of all the writers and the editors going on so that I might get stuff wrong.
See, I always felt bad that when I started reading about how comics were made, what I read about Jim Shooter, and you know, he used to do layouts doing those Legion stories, and I tried that and I just sucked at it so bad, you know, that I realized that it's better for me just to come up. I have an idea what the page looks like in my head, but you know, you're collaborating because somebody's going to add something to it. But I always would have loved to have been able to lay stuff out and not be a complete waste in terms of pencil to paper.
Well, I mean, it's a different, I mean, if you can describe, I don't think that's so much of a big deal. I mean, it's fun. It's cool. Like when Keith Giffen did it, but like the most important thing is if you have described a clear moment, right? Like if I can see what you're writing, then that's easy to do. It's when you get a lot of conflicting directions or, you know, or stuff doesn't add up. I always find that super difficult.
I would guess partially the reason that Shooter was doing that back in the day was that he wanted to be taken seriously, and he wanted to prove that this could actually work as a comic book, whatever, and he thought that would be the natural process to it. And I do like the idea that some writers could do that because, especially beginning writers, they can so overwrite either too much dialogue or they can overwrite that there's too many things happening on the page. And when the artist gets it, like, well, wait a minute, that's actually 20 panels you just wrote right there or something to that effect. Whereas if they do the layouts or if they even attempt to, then they'll realize like, oh, we can fit this much on this page, and that's about it.
Yeah.
Right.
Considering that Shooter was violating a lot of child labor laws just by working.
Yeah,
he was like 13 or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
His parents had to sign it for it.
Yeah.
So talk about the moment. Go back to Jeff. Can you go back to those pages of Scott's, please?
Yes, this one,
or
maybe that one.
Yeah. So this is a great opening because the story is starting. Many stuff, so much stuff that I read and screenplays, especially, people like want to start when the character is a child and explain why everything went this way, and then the actual story doesn't start until page 20.
Right.
This is just a great, besides being a great layout and a great designs, it's a terrific beginning to the story, because we're in here wondering what the hell are how these two guys in here.
Well, that's the thing. This is page 2 and 3. Page 1 is Mr. Freeze breaking out of a building that he was stealing stuff from, or he was supposed to be stealing stuff from. Yeah, that page, which we can see kind of. But yeah, I was very much raised in that classic format of like, you start with something fun and interesting, whatever happening, if it's action or some personal thing, whatever it is. You have to start with something interesting if you're going to catch the reader's attention at all.
Right.
But it's got to be something interesting that relates to this particular story. Like
exactly.
You could have started this with Mr. Freeze before he was Mr. Freeze, or when he was a child or something like that. But that's not the story you're telling. You're telling a story about now.
Yep.
The now of this. Always use the phrase, the now of the script is the most important thing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's actually why he's fighting a villain in this whole thing, is because you find out with this miniseries, this is Flashpoint or whatever different universe thing. Why he's Citizen Cold instead of Captain Cold. He's the hero of this town. So that was my opening, going like, well, how do I prove he's the hero of this town? Well, he's going to take out a villain. And then we'll prove that he's not really a nice guy. He doesn't take him out nicely. And then we quickly get in the shenanigans after that. But yeah, that was the thing. I was like, well, he's the hero of this town. Well, I got to prove he's the actual superhero of this town at this point, because there's no Flash.
Yeah.
It's very hard to be a nice guy when your name is Leonard Snart.
Oh, is that his name in the other dimension too?
Yeah, it's his name everywhere.
That's rough. That is rough. Who created with that name? That was mean. Leonard Snart.
Gardner Fox. That
would have been Gardner Fox, probably. Yeah.
But that was like the 12th story Gardner was writing that month. So it was just like, Leonard Snart. I don't know.
Snart.
Yeah.
Good times.
Exactly.
I mean, probably the 3 greatest rogues galleries in comics are Batman, Flash, and Spider-Man, and they all have pretty entertaining secret identity names as well.
Yep.
Well, one of the things I think that's important for a good comic book anyway, is that you have to have a good villain. Like, for your hero to be really interesting and relatable, they have to be human and whatnot, but they also have to have something to fight against that's scary and also really interesting and kind of relatable too. Like, your villain, you have to understand why your villain's doing what they're doing, even if you don't agree with it. And I think that's
or you have to wonder why they're doing it. Like Darth Vader doesn't, you don't really know why he's doing it. But yes, I agree with you.
Yeah, the villain. So coming up with the villain almost before you come up with the hero is a good way to start. Or like the fact that you showed the villain in that opening page, Scott, you really let us into like, oh, this guy's trouble. This world is in trouble. This is not safe.
Yep. And actually, if you read all the captions, making it part of the story, you find out that when Mr. Freeze opens that thing and breaks out of that building, he went in there to steal something. It wasn't there.
Oh,
he was set up.
Okay.
So then and that's where I was trying to make it that all the theme of the whole thing going that, even from the get-go, we find out that even the villains are being backstabbed kind of thing. And there's something going on in this town, and there's double dealing and all that kind of stuff.
Hey, Sean, how much do you think the mystery is important to the story? Like, not the reader asking questions, like not knowing what's going on. How much do you think that helps motivate stuff?
I think it motivates it a lot. And I have had this argument with many editors and story editors. And my point of it is that when I was a kid reading the Shadow books, you never really knew who he was. You knew that Lamont Cranston wasn't like a secret wasn't his secret identity. It was just another identity he used, and you didn't know if he was what kind of creature he was or what he did. And then there's a one called The Shadow Unmasks, where they do the whole origin, and it's like, well, I don't give a shit anymore. It was more interesting not knowing exactly what he was about than once you found out exactly what he was about. It's like, oh, I can move on.
Yeah.
Time for Doc Savage.
Yeah, exactly. I felt that way about Wolverine. Like, I liked being, was he a samurai? Was he a Western Frontiers guy? It's like, oh, now I know too much. I don't care anymore.
James Howlett. Yeah.
Is that his name now?
I think
apparently
when they finally just, I seem to remember hearing at the time the motivation was like, okay, well, look, now that Wolverine has been in the movies and the X-Men movie is so successful, if we don't tell this story, then Hollywood's going to tell this story, and we can't let that happen. So then that was the motive. That's what I heard was the motivation for why they did.
Well, that's a better reason than I heard.
Scott, what reason did you hear? Oh, did some guy named James pay them?
Money, 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 money. What's the Wolverine story that everyone's going to buy? His origin story.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Who is that little dragon dude, Scott?
Just making it up. Just doing a little dragon. This is one of those that I do for fun. I do it on the back of just a little greeting card.
That's super cute.
I don't think she's going to be watching this, but I do these little dragons for my mom.
That's adorable. Cool. What a good son you are.
Yeah.
Yeah,
or
sure.
Not. Sure, whatevs.
Better son if I would have sent this in time for her birthday.
Oh, yeah.
Hey,
so
Mother's Day is coming up.
Yeah.
That's why I'm racing.
Yeah. So not a good son.
Yeah. So
See?
The beginning, and then how do you keep it going after that? You get it.
Well, I think we talked. I mean, the stuff we were talking about a lot last time is how to start, but also how to create some sort of emotional bond with your character. Like if you don't care what's happening to this guy, whether it's interesting visually or emotionally, you're not gonna buy the book. I think that's hard. That's hard to do in a single image. One of the reasons I think the 2-page spread was such a great invention, because even if you didn't know what was happening, there was like Kirby, there was something happening. Like, oh yeah, look at that, but look at that giant freaking machine.
Yep.
Jeff was I want to go back to something about the mystery thing, but what you just said about was every issue of Way of the Rat have a 2-page spread for pages 2 and 3?
Yeah.
Now, and was that true of all cross-gen books, or was that something just you and Chuck came up with?
No, I think that was, I don't know if it was true for every cross-gen book, but it was true most of the time. We even had, this is one of the great things about cross-gen, we even had 2-page spread paper, so you didn't have to cut 2 pieces together.
Oh, sweet.
It was awesome. It was
Nobody has that.
If you guys want to keep chatting, I'll go get some.
Okay.
Cool.
Wow.
Well, we'll keep chatting.
And you know what's funny, Jones, is that whole thing about
the follow-up question.
Thing about the 2-page spreads.
Well, Jeff's getting the thing for his presentation. So, Sean, how do you balance that thing between? Because I'm totally inclined to agree with you in terms of mystery, but then it seems like when you're dealing with editors or notes from executives or different stuff, like there is that thing where how do you ride the line between someone in the audience of the movie theater going, who is that? What's happening? Where's Jerry? Who's Jerry? And like the proper level of like edge of your seat. I don't quite know what's going on. The story is ahead of me, but I'm in it. Because I feel like so many of the notes that you often get from people pushing back on the mystery are the people that have either are the type to go, "Who's Jerry?" or are they're just afraid of people saying, "Who's Jerry?"
They're afraid. They're afraid. They don't want any questions. They want it all planned out. And it's, the problem is people who are in a lot of executive, at least in movies and TV positions, are people who don't really care about movies and TV. They're number people, and they want the biggest possible return for the least possible investment. What they don't get is that you don't get that by planning things. You have to let some things happen, and you have to take risks.
Or some of those folks maybe really do care about story, but they report to people that are exactly what you just described.
I mean that could be too. Yeah, but I mean they don't. There's. I've been in many meetings where people have misused the term MacGuffin, which is from Hitchcock, and the MacGuffin is the thing that they're going after. And if you read Hitchcock Truffaut, the interviews with Hitchcock, he says it doesn't matter, because what matters is the people. We care about the people. We don't care about what they're chasing. But executives get very tied up in what they're chasing and miss the point of the people and emotion, which is what I talked about a long time ago. Say what?
I said I prefer a sausage and egg MacGuffin.
Yeah. I like
nice.
Holy, look at that.
That's on 2-page spread paper. That is the Sinking of Atlantis from the Crux issue that I did.
Yeah.
So you get to really cut loose, and it's you get to keep that big piece of art. Whereas regular 2-page spread, you have to cut things in half.
Mm-hmm.
Who inked that mofo?
Tom Ryder.
God bless him.
Yeah, he was good. He inked this one too. He was a dedicated perfectionist.
Fun guy to sit next
Sweet.
to.
The Mongol
Also
horde
a
attacking
Cubert
the
School
city.
grad.
Yeah, that took some time. But yeah, that was, I would say that was one of the best things about working at Crushing was the paper was excellent, and you had 2-page spread paper. So we would often do it like the first 2-page or 2-page 2 and 3, and we'd also often have a middle spread, which I thought was
Now,
when you pop the book open.
Were you doing splash pages, or were you sometimes doing like multi-panels on page 1 and then going to your 2-page spread?
It all depended on what the story was. Like, here's one of my all-time favorite 2-page spreads where he slices the dragon bellies open, and then all of these little dragons come out of the big dragon, and then he falls to the ground with all like them raining down around him.
How did you do? 20 issues of?
I think it made it all the way to 24, and I did 10 a year. So there's 2 fill-ins per year.
So are there 22 full issues that you drew?
I think there's 20 full issues that I drew.
So that's the most of any just one that you've done, right? Because Wonder Man ended up being just a few more fill-ins than that in the 24 that you did.
I think so, but we also got to issue 25 for Wonder Man.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Or it's very close. Like it's neck and neck between the amount of pages of the 2 books.
Yeah.
So, Jeff, does that take you longer to do a 2-page spread like that, or is it like doing one huge page, or does it depend on what?
It depends on what's on it. If it's just one big image of for impact of someone getting hit, that's not so bad. But if it is a gigantic cityscape with a lot of stuff happening, like it's just like 2 regular pages.
No.
Yeah.
Or more if you're doing a freaking cityscape.
Right. If you're doing a gigantic cityscape where the point is to suck the reader in and hold them for a while.
Yeah.
But that's something I've almost considered. Do I want to, as I'm just re-entering comics now again, it's like I've considered, do I want to go back to drawing on paper? Because because I've spent so many years drawing digitally through comic or through animation that I kind of like, well, I don't want to reinvent the wheel here again. So let me just draw comic pages on it, in the computer like I have been doing in animation. But then
right.
What's been tricky is that when you draw on paper, physics, gets in your way. Like
Yeah.
It's like the page is only so big, and so if you're drawing small things in a panel or whatever, like you can only go so small. And something that's been tripped me up a little bit is I'm like, oh, every panel takes the same amount of time practically because I can zoom in on the panel, or something like that. So it's like,
right.
So
right.
So I was like, oh, splash pages were actually taking me less time because a splash page image would take me about X amount of hours, just like panel 2 on page 3 took me X amount of hours,
But so every
Yeah,
panel was a splash page. That's crazy. I mean, it makes sense.
I also feel like I started to get the balance of not over zooming in too much, because you saw it especially when people were first starting to use the digital technology of like, oh, people are drawing way too much detail on this thing that's now super duper tiny. And there's like an impossible level of detail on that thing that's shrunk down. I don't feel like I do that too much, but it does just make it harder. I met someone last week who they've just got their Cintiq is only slightly bigger than an iPad. And they like working that way because even though you can zoom in on it, it kind of allows them to like look at what the actual page size would be. And I've been trying to think of that too, of like, okay, well, geez, when printed, my comic would maybe only be about this size on the screen. And so how do you limit yourself from, but like I said, that's where physics comes in handy. Of course, the shitty thing about physics, especially as we get older, is you're like, you like need a magnifying glass. You can't like quite look at all those small details.
Right.
Nope.
Well, that's not happening to any of us anytime soon.
No, yeah, we're all in tip physical condition.
Yeah. What about detail? Like, how much detail do you think needs to be in a story? Now that we're talking about it,
I'm going to say
not
that
just in the script, but how much detail does the reader or the viewer need?
I think, to be perfectly honest,
what do you mean by detail in that way? What do you mean by detail in that way, Sean?
Well, it's you look at a George Perez page and you look at a Toth page, and you can say they're both good pages. Is one better than the other because there's more detail to it?
I mean, like one of these?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Yeah, I tend to think that I put in too much detail. That there's a better compositional black and white system to do really. I mean, efficient. It depends on how efficient you want to be. Depends on because I love Jeff Darrow, how much detail he puts in. I can linger on a page, right? But like, if you're reading a Toth Zorro story, you're flying through that. So it's not the same goal.
But maybe I should put it this way: does detail make it better? Because Jeff, you do a lot of detail, but there's nothing extraneous in there. You've thought about everything that goes in there, and you very rarely, to my knowledge, throw anything in just for fun. It's why if there's like 16 characters in the panel, you have an idea of who they are and why what's going on at that particular moment.
Right.
That's true, but I also think that if I put them in silhouette, that the reader would still know enough.
Yeah.
And Jeff's sort of allergic to doing anything that he thinks is like a quote unquote shortcut. What I mean? It's like if the writer says all 16 characters appear in the shot, Jeff's like, well, got to put all 16 characters in the shot.
I know.
Yeah.
And the truth is, one of the other great things apart from the paper about CrossGen was that I got to work with Bart Sears. He was he was my boss, and one day he took my Ruse issue and we went through it panel by panel, and he showed me how I could have done it a lot more simply and more impactfully by choosing my by choosing my moment better, by choosing the detail better. I think the amount of detail is not necessarily the issue, but like ranking the detail. Like this needs to be seen this way. This needs maybe not this much. I'm terrible at that.
Yeah, I'm thinking
it is picking and choosing your battles.
Yeah, and that's how do you tell a story is your style of telling a story is what battles you pick and choose.
Right.
You
We're gonna have-
I was
we're gonna
talking
have to have a
earlier,
get-
like, do we really need to know like how this character's childhood and how they grew up? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. But just putting it in there is not necessarily going to make the story better.
Right.
But if Sean, if we're gonna have a good rounded out discussion about how much detail is necessary from an artist perspective, we're going to have on some guest artists, because you've come to the wrong 3 artists in terms of like holding
Right.
back detail.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the right 3 artists in terms of why they put the detail in. It's not just in there just to, make it more detailed. It's in there because it helps the story and helps the moment.
Right.
And because
to me, the moment is everything.
And because each of these artists suffer from serious OCD issues that they're working out in their art.
Well, I mean, that's not untrue. But I also think that all of us are pretty dedicated to creating the world that the story is happening in.
Sure.
And so, I mean, Scott did a really great 2-page top-down shot of Grodd going through the city and destroying the whole city. So you could see where he had been throughout it was like one of those cool family circus things. And it just, it told such a great story. You could see the destruction and the damage that had been done. And you really felt for all the people in the story. Like, oh shit, that guy's store was destroyed. That guy's car is all jacked up, right? I think I think that helps build the emotional connection to the reader if they feel the consequences in the world that you're drawing. And the only way you can really do that is by showing them stuff.
I mean, besides my own anal retentiveness, right? I think there's something to what Jeff's saying of like, I started as Jeff's background assistant, so that kind of put an emphasis on.
I said you on the wrong path.
Well, no, and
could have saved him, but no, you shoved him.
Well, and Jeff and I started our professional careers, even though it was a very cheaply paid professional career, drawing, a sort of sci-fi fantasy comics where we were making our own world. So
right.
we constantly did have to put in kind of a lot of backgrounds, because we weren't just setting it in the regular world. We were creating a world for people to kind of go into. So that sort of probably set us on that path too, and then I think all of my influences in animation stylistically, whether it's Disney or anime or whatever, combined with working in animation, like even in close-ups in animation, you generally have a background, you know what I mean?
Right.
Because even if you're just working off the stuff if you're lucky enough to have worked with Vince Toyama or anyone, if you've got backgrounds already, you're placing them in there. Like just looking at, like Jeff has the best background. Well, actually mine's pretty dramatic. Mine's a little too dramatic, except I'm not well centered, whereas Jeff is, but Jeff's, the corner of Jeff's room, is in a good place in the rule of thirds, and we're getting some ceiling and stuff, and we're getting some nice perspective, but then Jeff's well centered. Mine's more dramatic, but then the placement of the character is terrible. But
well, the character is part of the problem there.
Yes, 100% for sure, or the lack of character. But I think so I've had friends like on this latest comic I did being like, you don't need a background. You've already established it. And yes, you don't always need it. And sometimes, also coming from animation, I'm not opposed to reusing and slightly rejiggering a background that I've already drawn. And that's something that's easier when you're working digitally. But for me, it just always feels really naked, like to not have some hint of a background in there, even in a close-up, because I guess even in film and TV, they'll generally at least be like an out of focus background, depending on the lens you're using or something like that. Very rarely are people just floating in space in film and TV,
But that's something we can do in comics that we can't do in TV too, because it's setting up someone, like if we were to cut from this to one of you guys and there was no background there, that would be a completely different camera setup and a completely
it'd be super weird.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but you could use it in comics, and to do that, I'm agreeing with you, Steve. To do that is emphasizing what's going on with that character at that moment, rather than the
I mean,
world they're in.
I should probably try to do it, to use less backgrounds, more particularly in close-ups. But like I said, it's just this is where the OCD does maybe come in.
Right.
But you think about it, so because I suffer from the same thing. It doesn't make the moment better, or doesn't it? That's because to me, it's the moment. It's like acting, Steve. It's like you once you're performing, you're not playing the whole part. You're playing that moment.
Exactly.
Well, Steve, tell me if I'm wrong, but I remember James Cameron talking about the fact that in his screenplay, he wrote a lot of scenes that he didn't wind up filming, but that the actors had read and they knew that their character had gone through this, even though they didn't wind up filming it.
Yep.
So that they had that emotional background underneath with what their performance was on.
I mean, I don't know if that was a 100% on purpose. I mean, say for me, I far prefer the theatrical cut of Aliens than to the special edition. And the special edition contains, like they have it that Ripley has had a daughter and that she's, gotten old, that she's missed her daughter's life. And that's a really great idea. It's really good writing and it's all that kind of different stuff. And it certainly then sets up and affects why Ripley is going to behave the way that she does with Newt. But I far prefer, I think the theatrical cut just works better, moves better. It's a much tighter, more interesting film.
The pacing is a lot better.
It does what Sean does well too. Like, I understand why you would write the scenes about showing the guys and the people in the Shake and Bake colony first, like without anything. But at the same time, it ends up being way more effective just coming into this completely. It adds the mystery coming into this totally destroyed thing. Right. And so I don't know if I seriously doubt, given the age he was at, the restrictions they were under, the fact they're shooting in England with all those stuff. I seriously doubt that he did it on purpose on Aliens anyway. I think he probably wrote it with the full intention of using it, but then he was just needfully ruthless in the editing room to realize, if we cut this out, we don't need it. And it informs Sigourney's performance wonderfully, but then it just makes her, an interesting character that you care about. We don't need to know why, you don't need to understand why an adult human being would care about trying to care for a child.
That's exactly
what
the
I was
point.
thinking when you said that.
One of the reasons why I think those scenes weren't needed, even though they're interesting and they could give the actors background or whatever they want to do, is because with the Ripley thing, with her going into that mother role, there was nothing that we had seen before or in that film as we were introduced to her that said that she was like an anti-mother, that she wasn't a mother, that this would have been going against the grain. So when she fell into that role, it seemed very natural to her. We didn't need to know that she was actually a mom and doing all those things beforehand. Actually, I agree with you. I think it's a little bit ham-handed. It's too strong when we know that she's a mom and she's missing the daughter and everything else. And, oh, hey, we see a new daughter. And the same thing with those people on the planet. We don't need to know that there's people on a planet for most of it. If we were like 1900 and we're seeing this, movie for the first time, yes, we need to know how people live on another planet and do things. But we've all seen Star Trek, we've seen Star Wars, all these other things. So it's assumed that it would be a certain regular thing. So when we walk in and then we see that it's not normal, that's the interesting part of the story of going like, oh yeah, what the hell?
No, our friend Derek co-created The Boys, and I've been rewatching the show as now that the final season is upon us and stuff. And I know this comes from the comics, but again, it's something I don't think we needed. That the Billy Butcher character had this brother Lenny, and that's why he's got a soft spot for Huey. I mean, it's like it's like, okay, I get that, but again, I guess it's because it gets right to the same thing. You don't need to explain why an adult woman is going to care about saving a child any more than I don't think you need to explain why a ruthless guy might have a soft spot for just another human being. It doesn't have to be like, oh, well, it's because he had a brother,
Right.
That's
almost
a lot of people think that's necessary, and not just executives and stuff, but writers. That I see that every script, at least once a week in some script, I see someone who gives me unnecessary background.
It's
Right.
like they want
Right.
everything proven, and you don't have to prove everything.
It's exactly
Yeah.
right. They want you. That's a brilliant way of putting it too, Scott. They want everything proven, and they don't want to.
They want, see,
They
this
don't-
2 + 2 = 4. I showed you,
Right.
Well,
and we
then I
don't
guess-
need that.
Right.
I guess it goes
Right.
back to that. It's like it's Sean's thing about the now thing or something. Not that no, I don't think Blake Snyder is the end all be all, but I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that's helpful about breaking down stories and scripts and his stuff, and just that concept of saving the cat. It's like having a character save the cat to show that they're a good character. Great. We don't need to explain why he had cats when he was a kid, and that's why he always was going to be
Right.
nice to cats, so that when the cat comes, it's like in one moment in the middle of a scene, while he's like crossing the street arguing with someone and trying to figure something out, he stoops down to save a cat and then keeps going with, like that's shown us right there. Oh, this is a good person, like,
Yeah.
it's the classic show don't tell, I guess,
Totally.
Right.
Absolutely. But also
Well,
the Kurt Vonnegut thing, where he's just like, get closest to the end of the story that you can. That's where you actually start the story, is closest to the end, and then do it. You don't have to back all the way up to the beginning before anything happen.
Right.
I don't
right,
remember who
you
said
know.
that thing about you want to get into a scene as late as you possibly can, which is what Sean was just reacting to.
Yep.
When he thought, Scott started that scene. Scott only started it a few seconds before, but he was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
how ballsy to literally start." Like if the scene is just these guys blasting away at each other, but like get in as late as you can and get out as quick as you can, right?
And to be fair, he's completely right, because I took a little bit of risk with my page 1. It wasn't nearly as fun as this 2-page spread.
It start a scene in the middle. That's the best place to start it. You don't start.
Oh, I love that. That's a good. That's good.
Hi, how are you? I'm fine. How have you been today? How'd you get here? Did you drive? Did you walk? Nobody gives a shit. What are you there to talk about?
Didn't Lauren
Well,
Michaels from Saturday Night Live say never show a closed door, always have it being open, or have it in the process of opening?
Yes. Well, that's the page I sent you guys this week. That John Romita page. What I was fascinated by and kept going back to is the different angles of the door in that. And especially the choice at the end of the page that you see her close the door from the inside when it was pretty well set up to see her close it from the outside.
Right.
Well,
don't-
Sean, I'm wondering if then is your experience as a writer, like, say, okay, me and Jeff and Scott were teaching artists how to draw, and we're like, okay, look, you need to understand form and perspective. And so the human body is a series of spheres, cylinders, cones, and then your beautiful page, and then you're drawing all that stuff. And in the process of learning to draw, you are doing all that stuff. But then at a certain point, when you've drawn it enough, you don't actually have to do it anymore. It comes naturally, and you can eventually you get to Kirby's point where you just start in the top left corner of the page, and you just draw the finished page across, and you're not even doing any underdrawing. But so, as a writer, do you go through that process where you start the scene and you do actually start it like, hey, how are you? Oh, I'm fine. And then you to get to the good part, and then you just cut all that bullshit at the beginning, and then eventually you get
sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes it's running in my head as a movie or as a comic, and I don't need to do the intro stuff because I know where we're going from there.
Right.
But
in the process of learning to write, like, did you sort of have to find that, like, oh, you kind of just sit down and you start writing a whole bunch, and then you get to the good stuff, but you sometimes have to, like, oh, I had to actually write the first 2 minutes of the scene to realize we don't need any of these 2 minutes, and we should start the scene on page 3.
Yes, and that yes, I had to do that. Yes, and it still happens now where I start something, I'm like, no, all right, these 10 pages can go, and I'm going from here.
Yep. I would do that constantly on that Citizen Cold and other ones. I'd be writing like 3 or 4 pages in, and I'm like, oh no, I'm already, page 4 is now where it starts. I don't need those other pages. And sometimes it's just like getting in the flow and getting in the mood of whatever this thing is going on. And then also finding the hook of going like, okay, we've got this thing. Oh, wait, it's this part. It's when they go in the sewer. That's the cool part. So then you get rid of all the other stuff, or you try to explain some of it away in a caption box if you need it.
Back to that horrible story that I told you about with Jackie Chan, and I worked on another cartoon that was like this too, in which I won't name exact names, but that's the whole point. What's really important about being a professional and working with other professionals is that you learn to do this process as much as possible before all the other people show up whose time and money you're going to be, So yes, it's a funny, good example of that on that episode of Jackie Chan that we worked on, that Michael Chang directed, God bless him, that we ended up like, oh, this script is so long and it's been so overboarded because there's so much stuff in it that we've actually had to just cut the teaser and act 1 out of the show, and we're starting the 22-minute show at the beginning of act 2.
Right.
But that would all be an hysterical, nice, great example of what we just discussed, except a bunch of artists had to spend weeks drawing the teaser and act 1 to have it end up on the cutting room floor, and they could have made what ended up being the whole show of act 2 and act 3 much better if they'd been allowed to only work on that stuff. And I worked for another longtime industry veteran on a show, like a Saturday morning style show, and it was like when the scripts came in and they came in too long, it was just like he just was like, nope, I have to see it before I can figure out what the editing is. And it's like, okay, well, you're in
thank you, Sean.
And Sean knows this guy. Your inability
Oh, do I?
We'll talk about it after the show. Your inability to pre-cut, like at the script stage, is causing more backbreaking work for everyone, and not letting us make what's going to end up being in the show be better.
Yeah.
I think I just saw our edit reel for this show for whenever Sean's going to make the.
Well, I do think that nice. That is one of the differences between comics and between.
Go on. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, I think that's one of the differences between working in comics and working in animation is, like, in comics, if you have 22 pages, you have between 4 and 7 pages or panels on each page. Your number of moments is entirely limited, and you have to pick which ones are necessary, not even which ones are best, but which ones are necessary to move the story along. Because it's if you skip too many beats, then it doesn't make any sense. When I worked on the first trade paperback, Away the Rat, Chuck let me pace everything out for the last issue, and I spent too much time on the fight scene, and I didn't leave enough time for the denouement for the trade paperback, and so I really rushed the ending, and it felt really unsatisfying because I misused. I just misused 15 of my panels. Right, that's not a ton, but it's but it wound up costing, I think, the quality of the story. I think it was an unsatisfying ending.
Two mistakes I see a lot are a rushed ending or not confidence in your ending, so you give it 2 more endings.
Right.
Yeah.
Not just cutting it, but rushing it is really.
Flip
it really
sides of
hurts.
the same
It
coin.
really hurts when I feel like I've rushed the ending of something I'm writing. That's gorgeous, Scott.
Oh yeah, that's a good one, Scott.
Thank you. I've run into that more times with other novels I was listening to, Sean, where they literally had like 7 endings on this thing. I'm like, okay, this isn't the end.
Yeah.
Oh, we're gonna find this out too.
Yeah.
But okay, all right. This isn't the end either. And they literally did it like 7 times. I'm like, oh my God, end this story now. Holy
where you would have
cow,
been satisfied
where
you would have been satisfied with the first one.
Yeah. Well, I find that there's a new one of the reasons I stopped watching The Simpsons is because the joke ratio used to be vicious. It was fast. They threw jokes out. They left they let you deal with it. And then it seemed when I hit I don't even know which season, in the 20s, that they would make a joke, and then the standard was then to make someone have a comment on that joke. And so it was like, oh, wasn't that a funny thing? It's like, and so I really felt like that that just belabored all the points and took all the comedy out. So I think you
And they
it's like
don't-
have to,
They don't have
Yeah.
confidence in their joke.
yeah.
You know, they feel, you know,
Gesundheit.
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 Demons out.
Danke.
And they're
What's this
ruining
one,
the
Scott?
rhythm by doing
Oh.
all of those things.
Yeah, yeah, that's beautiful.
Nice poison ivy.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I mean, so I would say that one of the things that I talk a lot about when talking about storyboarding and storytelling is like pacing and rhythm, like how you move the reader or the viewer through the story, and that's your job as the storyteller. Like you set that tone, you set that pace, and I think it's how you keep someone engaged, right? Like too fast, you'll leave them. Too slow, you'll bore them. And so you have to make sure that you are hitting the right moments in the right time, which is tricky.
And I find that editors that I've worked with have not much of a notion of rhythm of storytelling or rhythm of a page even, and it's so important to me because that's how you get emotional. It's like a song, you know.
Yeah,
Goes faster,
exactly.
goes slower, you know, goes sideways. That, you know, it's so crucial to like a good story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's you want the experience for your viewer. You know, you want them to have a good experience. You want them to, you know. Excuse me. Wait. All right. So we've got 4 minutes. I don't know if we're going to be able to get to the Miyazaki story. We might have to save it for the next one. Yep. I'm just saying. I think we might have to.
All right.
And that is an
All right.
example of a cliffhanger.
I haven't timed this one, so.
So I think we're gonna save it. Let's save it.
So do we get to the middle of a story and should we talk about ending next week?
Yeah. I think that,
And that sounds good.
Let's talk about the ending next week. So let's talk about how to close it down. Like we talked about opening the scene. We talked about keeping the pacing moving. We talked about building relationship with your characters and rhythm. Let's talk about the hardest. I think the second act is the hardest thing, but like I think the real thing that people remember the most is the ending.
Yes. In Hollywood, it's almost a cliche to have some editor go, "You've got second act problems." What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right.
You've got second act problems.
Your second act drifts. It's boring. No one knows what's going on. Yeah.
You introduce the situation, don't know what to do with it, but you know that you have this ending that you're going to get to, but you're saving it till the end.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I always thought
a lot of times. I'm sorry. I was just gonna say a lot of times they say you have second act problems. And they don't even understand what they're saying. You know.
Well, yeah.
Well,
I apologize, Jeff.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, that's one of the things I always thought when Scooter said that it's, you know, storyboarding is traffic management, getting people from one place to the other. I always thought that was just a brilliant way to think about it. It's like, well, how do I get this person from point A to point B, not just, you know, in the world, but in the story? And I think that's thinking about the mechanics of that always helped me figure out what needed. Well, they have to be here. They have to be there. You know, so always helped me connect the dots in a way.
Yeah.
Yep.
Scott, what's that one? Great.
This is Absolute Wonder Woman 15. It's the one that's a crossover with Absolute Batman. I actually did pick it up because besides the fun of it, that they do that. It's a more of a slow burn, whatever, for the page one, but they are introducing the scenario. And we have a chessboard with Batman and Wonder Woman on it. So the rest of the story is dealing with the fact they're being set up with something. Right. So this is one way to do that start of story is show the villain sort of in the background, setting things up and showing that we're going to have our two heroes, you know, dealing with the situation. They also make a little commentary on toys and stuff and how they're kind of garbage, but it's a neat page one. Like the one that I showed was the Michael
that's
Golden.
such a great page.
Right.
So good.
It's such a genius.
And this is
like his framing and his compositions are so amazing.
Well, and
but it sets up the story. Yeah. It shows Spidey being Spidey. These guys are talking about, you know, what's going to happen to these tenement buildings that we already seeing it's slum that people are living in, but it looks empty and stuff.
Right.
And then it goes on to kind of cap on that situation, but then it goes straight to this is basically a Marvel team up story that was printed in Marvel Fanfare kind of thing, where it's
so
going to go to the
good.
Hulk stuff, so that we get Banner in space and whatnot, and then we get the change with Banner and he gets attacked by an alien creature, and then we get the Hulk, which gets eventually these are all great neat situations leading to, you know, the fight scene that comes up when Hulk is dumped onto this neighborhood that was already in trouble,
Right.
and then they face off.
We should just do a panel by panel breakdown of this comic.
I mean, it is one of the all-time classics.
But this is literally what we're talking about with the middle of the story of like how to keep it interesting, is that they give us the little bit at the beginning saying that Peter's not feeling well, but it actually becomes a continuing plot point during all of this, is that Spider-Man's only barely getting out of the way of the Hulk.
Right.
Because he's sneezing, because things are going, because the crowd's there, and this neighborhood that's going to get destroyed.
It's also the War of the Worlds Deus Ex Machina, right? That they've set up. Like it's his cold that actually slays the thing that is taking control of the Hulk, right? So it's a brilliant
So he sneezes on it right there. And again, we think that this isn't a great thing, that then Spider-Man's thrown off and he crash bangs and all these other things going on. So then we do all the good stuff that you need to do in the middle of the act. We have all the interesting stuff going on. S.H.I.E.L.D. then comes in with their weapons, their drones and stuff that start attacking and blowing things up. And then Spider-Man's, trying to save more people from all the crash and the bang and all the craziness going on. So it's great. It ratchets up each piece of the story, ratchets a little bit more and a little bit more, a little bit more, until, we finally get to the ending of like, okay, it's over. Spider-Man's barely saving these people. They're hiding out in a little bit of a stairway, a bunker kind of thing. How in the world's going to end this thing? All this Clash of Titans stuff is going on until finally Banner starts to come back because the cold affected the thing on the back of his neck and it dies.
Yeah. Great.
But that's for next week in the how you finish the story.
Did you bend the cover? Both that Wonder Woman and that comic.
Scott just treated that like a 7-year-old, like a baby comic that you lent to your 5-year-old.
This one has been loved so much, and I have other copies of it. This is my beat copy I keep next to my table because the cover has literally come off.
Yeah, that's a beloved comic right there.
Yep, I've been there, but
yeah.
You don't want to know how I keep my golden ages.
Oh, rolled up in the back pocket. That's how they belong.
Yeah.
Well, Scott destroying another classic.
And besides Michael Golden, we should mention that this was also by Bill Mantlo. I think Bill Mantlo came up with the initial script. Then Michael Golden had it. And I think he took like a long time, like 6 months, a year maybe, to finish the story. So Mike then affected the plot and worked on it. Probably helped a lot on Act 2, I'll bet you.
Sure.
But we shouldn't write Bill Mantlo out of the credits of the story.
No, Bill Mantlo was great. All right, gentlemen. I think we did it. Next week, we'll talk about ending the story and how to make a good ending, and then how to lock. We always called it buttoning down a scene. Buttoning down a scene, I thought, was important for animation, but like just how to end the story.
Yeah, put a button on it.
Yeah, put a button on it. Put a little bow.
And Sean's got to tell his scuttlebutt story.
Yeah, tell being yelled at in Japanese by a genius.
Yeah, I know. That's. I can't wait to hear it. All right, fellas, you're the best. We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.